Okay, here we are entering into 1810 of the main empire scenario of nations in arms. What do we got? Wait, we forgot to do something. The English might end their war in India. I think they just did. I think it ends on a 5 or more. No, ends on a 7 or more. And it's only one die, so it's +1 per year. It's not clear if this can end. So this ends at the end of a year, but the first check is the winter of the year that it comes out, which I got wrong last time I did it. What's not clear is if it's every year you check or every season after this. I think the only way to reconcile the rules is to say you check every season, but we're going to have that +1. But there's still no chance. I can check to make sure it doesn't gain a +1 every season, but I'm pretty sure it's every year. Anyway, let's get to what happened, especially in 1809. If you're following along this long, maybe check one of the earlier ones where I went over more of what's going on. But 1809 was a big year. So France and Prussia were at war with Austria, Russia, and Britain. And France and Prussia managed to defeat Austria and knock them out of the war. Prussia took East Galicia, which was big. I'm not sure I would have taken it if I had known that Austria owned West Galicia, which is now a little island of Austrian territory. I'm allowed to do that because I have the connection to East Galicia. And East Galicia shut the French out of Russia, which is a big deal. Prussia also came to an agreement with with England and Russia, in which Russia basically surrendered what they would give up, which is Masovia, what Prussia really wanted. Prussia now has everything it needs from the coalition to win the game automatically, which means they can turn against France. Now, France ended up declaring war in the winter, which was a very, very short turn, and Napoleon got up into the mountains, is threatening the Prussians. If we end up, the coalition will get another turn, and Blucher is good enough, he can guarantee to run away before Napoleon comes in, which is a big deal because Blucher only has one army, Napoleon has 3 with him. Anyway, anything else? Yeah, Spain conceded to England. They would have been able to hold out into this next year, build up some more troops. But, you know, I don't know. Given that, they had a shot because the Brits don't have a lot of troops there. But here's the thing. If I'm not going to hold Portugal, if I'm not going to get Portugal and drive the British out of it completely, I might as well give up on this war. I think Spain made a mistake, though, because with their reinforcements, they would have, the Brits are only going to get like 4 steps to their army. Spain doesn't have a huge amount of steps in production, though. So they still might not be in great shape. So they surrendered Portugal as a minor and Gibraltar they didn't have to give Gibraltar up. It goes with the peace, right? Because it's part of British national territory, which is kind of funky because what it means is that the Brits can actually build armies there. Like, they can build forces there. It is a supply source, blah, blah, blah. There's no way you can cut that off. So you can't stop the Brits from, like, utilizing Gibraltar as a way to get into Spain, except by taking it from them, which they had done earlier. We're looking at what might be a pretty interesting situation. France is moving against Prussia and Russia. If they can defeat Prussia, then they have a shot at Russia. I've still got the Boulogne camp, which I think might allow me to take Russia cheap. However, Russia gets to build their army back up. So we're probably going to be facing some significant forces. Whereas the French, yeah, they got a fair amount to rebuild still. I was going to say they're at their strength, but they're not. They're not. They cleared out the Russians from back here that had invaded. There's a high probability that Turkey will end up joining France in this war because Turkey has the Ottoman Empire. And if they get that, Odessa and Kiev, they don't have to win a war or anything. You just have to occupy them. They win the game. Which brings an interesting problem. You know, Turkey just win? Who stops them, right? We've got a sort of weird situation with the event cards. And this has to do with how they're handled, but maybe not entirely. All the new cards get shuffled into the remainder of the deck, right? I've held a lot of angst over the game in terms of, geez, will we run out of deck? Well, we're actually going to now. And there are additional cards coming out. It might be possible that there wouldn't be, because players are holding on to big stacks of cards. If nobody ever plays any, the deck could run out in a 7-player game. But that's not what actually drove me here. What drove me to covering it this time is I don't think there are enough cards. Let's see. France gets 2, 3 for Flanders. Italy gets created. Now, we do not have Romagna. So we're not going to get, let's see, these should be gone. We do not have Romagna. So we don't control all of Italy. So France only gets 2 plus 1, 3 cards. Britain's going to get 2, I guess. So that's 7, 8, 9, 10 cards total. We've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have exactly the right number. If we had 1 card less, what's not clear is who gets from this pile. Now, you know, there's no order of dealing or anything like that really here, right? Major powers in diplomatic phase. Okay, so Spain, Turkey, Prussia, Austria, Russia. France then gets all theirs. So the person who would get boned or bonus, because those are cards that were actually playable, would be Britain. So that's kind of interesting. And I guess you actually, instead of what I've been doing, which is dealing them out kind of at random. I mean, what I do is I deal 1 for France, 1 for Britain, 1 for everyone else, then go back 2, 2, and then to 3, 4, whatever. But that wouldn't be applicable. I think each player gets their own whole packet. It doesn't really matter in this case. I'll shuffle what we've got. Now next turn we're going to be exactly at the end, which is really a bonus because that means these all get put into play. Now what that also means though is if anybody gets shorted, Britain gets no cards by the ordering, which again doesn't feel right. To me it feels like I would rather see France get screwed out of a card because they're getting like 3 or 4 cards before Britain does or whatever. But it's done in, it actually does specify, let's is it again? New cards are added. Major powers in diplomacy order randomly draw their cards. Small enough at 10 cards that I'm going to use a 10-sided die to roll up the cards instead of dealing them as I would normally shuffling. But note here also, previously played cards are set aside and they are returned to the deck only when there are no more playable cards. So if there's any 1811 cards, I don't know if there are. Probably. Nope, we go to 1812 and then 1813. If there were any 1811 cards, those would, as far as I can tell from how this is worded, go to Spain first, etc. Right? Now, those cards have, the cards that are added to the deck have a preponderance, I think, of not being generically useful and maybe a lot of public events and whatnot. So it's kind of a bone to get them compared to other cards, but it's probably better than getting no cards whatsoever. Let's take a look at the cards we have. Center of Operations. This is for the French. On play of this card, the player may make a single move of supply wagons without a leader up to their movement allowance. That's cool. Okay, whatever. Talleyrand. For any one diplomacy action, add a +6 bonus is awarded to the player. Almost totally useless at this point in the 7-player game. Could be really useful in less players, though, being able to influence major powers. Flight of the Eagle. This one is amusing. The Napoleon leader is moved from his current force to any French-controlled hex, where he takes command of the force therein. Reorganize both hexes according to hierarchy rules. Anybody can play that. They can just teleport Napoleon away. I mean, cool, I guess. We're on a new year, so we got to pay attention. The Brits are going to bring another foreign war into play if nothing happens. But let's take a look at what we got here. Holland annexed. If Holland is allied to France, it's no longer considered a minor power and becomes a province of the Grand Empire. Dutch combat units are replaced with French units of equivalent value. The land leaders remain in play. That could be really useful if France regains Holland, and a simple forced march. It's not too interesting right now. Put that third Rome up here. Let's do this one for Prussia, I guess. Nationalism. One mandatory alliance can be broken freely. We don't have any mandatory alliances. So that's not really useful right now. But on the other hand, do we want to delay the third Rome by a turn? I don't know. We'll see. Let's go to Spain. USA, playable only if France and Britain are at war. Britain must send a fleet. Okay, so this is another, oh, this is weird. Got a star here, remove when played, foreign war. Does this have all that? Yeah, it does, okay. So depending on who gets to play first, and I think Spain gets to play first, Spain is not part of any alliance. They'll play this, hit England with another foreign war at the same time. The third Rome's not going to happen because of the restriction that only one foreign war can happen at a time. We'll do Turkey. Holy Russia. If Russia is invaded by an enemy force with at least 15 steps in an army, the Russians can set up a bunch of troops. Well, we're not going to help them. Austria. Bolivar. Spain must send a fleet and 2 steps with any leader. So this is another foreign war card. Again, only one can happen each year. So, neat. And finally, the Russians War Council playable before the first land impulse. No forced march is allowed this turn, and all friendly demoralized forces are immediately rallied. So this is weird because it prevents anyone from doing forced marches. It's just weird. Okay. And that means the Spanish go first, and they must play the USA card. Britain has to send a fleet and 2 infantry steps with a 2-star leader. Well, we'll put that over here with their other one. Turkey, Prussia. Only one public event can be played per coalition, but this block... See, last time I didn't follow the ordering thing. Nationalism, one mandatory alliance can be broken freely according to the rules. So the English did not play one. The Austrians aren't part of a block. This has to be played. One mandatory alliance can be freely broken. There are no mandatory alliances. So this goes back in the deck, though. This one does not have a play once. So it's just garbage. Austria has Bolivar to play, but there's a foreign war, so it doesn't get played this year. Britain's is again a foreign war, doesn't get played this year. So that Russo-Turkish war is going to be held off because other people are getting foreign wars. How about that? All right, that's going to put us to the economics. I was coming up here expecting to do some of the economics, but I just don't feel up to it anymore. I'm up here on Saturday. My new camera hasn't come yet, but this one's working great. I started doing the economic phase, and I'm on the Prussians at this point. And I realized it would be kind of cheating, but nothing significant's happened. I could release Hanover and make it into its own state. Now, it would have had to happen back in the winter phase. But it's an interesting question, honestly. Hanover doesn't have enough money to produce 2 units on its own. It has the manpower for it, but it needs to be funded. But that led me to some interesting questions. First of all, is it wise for me to do that? It does open Hanover up to being taken only in the winter turns by the French. But it would give me a couple extra steps to build, which right now I think all I have is a detachment that I probably stuffed into a fortress somewhere. Otherwise, my army is completely built, which is kind of a problematic situation. Now, I'm going to end up buying, I guess, Dutch ships, because why not? You know, I've got like 41 bucks there. That's not particularly helpful. But the extra troops seems like not a bad idea. Although I have plenty of excess troops that don't fit into my armies. I have the Austrian Corps, I have my Dutch over here and whatnot. But yeah, I think I will release Hanover. But when you think about this politically, what the fuck does it mean? Right? Hanover is by rights held by King George. You know, it's his actual territory, maybe more so, more legitimately than England itself, right? So to create a minor, like to seize territory that the French had seized and just hold it and still be in an alliance with Britain is problematic enough. But what the hell does it mean if I install another government? What is that government? You know, it's really a weird concept to hand it off. But I think I'm going to do it just, in games terms. I don't know what this is, though. Like, it may officially owe fealty to King George, but like, certainly isn't going to be run as some kind of republic or anything like that. But the day-to-day handling of affairs is going to be including the military and political, diplomatic stuff, is going to be controlled entirely by Prussia. I have no idea what it all means, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing. We're doing Austria's economics, and in order to calculate that out, I have to take the 1805 scenario money for Austria and subtract a couple of bucks for East Galicia, fine. But also, they've lost Venice, which used to be theirs, as territory. Now, the interesting thing here is Venice changes its income between 1792 and 1798. This is, an unexpected thing for me. I don't know if there's any others that are like this. I didn't really look too carefully. But it, to me, is particular. Naples does too, but I think that's because of Sicily. Venice doesn't own anything that's taken away from them or anything. There's nothing on map to account for that. They're just a buck poorer, and that's a very odd thing. Now, I'm sure there's reasons for that. Probably having to do with how they're incorporated later. Like here, they don't have the trade. That's fine. They wouldn't have trade as part of Italy. Anyway, I don't know what that's from, but I just figured I'd point it out. It complicates the calculation and the search type, the mechanism to find things within the different evaluations and everything. And it all really has to work back to the 1805 scenario. But like, if there was a grand campaign, you'd have a real issue with that, actually. I guess. I don't know, because your starting point would be the 1792. And there'd kind of have to be a special rule or something about it. I don't know what I'm doing. I caught something, Mecklenburg. The Prussians were sitting in the capital of Mecklenburg at the end of winter, so they actually would have conquered it from Russia outside of any peace process, whatever. So I'm just giving that over to them, and they're absorbing it because they can. It doesn't have any troops or anything, so now it adds, I guess, whatever little bit of money it's worth. I'm doing the same trick I did with Austria last year, which is putting a corps and a detachment aside. This is extra manpower that I could build, but I don't have the money for it. I'm counting on Britain being able to raise the money, but actually Prussia is probably a better choice to give the money, because Prussia's not going to be able to use 18 bucks. So however much they can give, they will, because their money goes away at the end of each turn. That just helps Britain, and I don't see any reason to kind of hoard money, to kind of try to take away Britain's money as one of the coalition members. We may need it later, right? And the chances are that for Prussia, they're going to need to be taking down France. I'm guessing. I don't know. There's not the War and Peace situation of, oh, I want to be on the coalition because if I'm not on the coalition, France will win by surviving the game. That doesn't exist in this one. There's also no chance for Napoleon to return in this one, which he has in War and Peace. He doesn't really have a chance to return from exile in Empires in Arms that I know of. Like, you can ban Napoleon and take him out of the game. And then he's gone. He's not coming back unless maybe there's a way you can reverse that ban as a peace condition. I don't recall. Just limited to giving $6 max. That's what any country can give. Building that full infantry corps is the most important thing, so I'm going to wait until the British money comes through to see what they might give. Economics is done. The French corsairs failed. One of them got sunk, and with only 4 of them, they're not guaranteed a good result. They got nothing. They're not guaranteed a result, so they got nothing on a bad die roll. British built a couple more fleets. Now, look, I cheated by building what? I think a fleet in... I don't remember for who. I think the Prussians built like the Dutch fleet. Yeah, over there. They wouldn't be allowed to spend that money to provision it. Whatever. You know, I just feel like it's unreasonable that miners can only build fleets if they're under British control, with the one exception of the Antwerp fleet that gets built for free, which is just weird. But that's not really a miner. That's just whoever controls Flanders. I think it's the Antwerp one. Jesus. And like, to me, it makes more sense it would be the Amsterdam one. But it is indeed Antwerp. So there we have it. And the Brits built what they could. Basically 6 steps up there. I'm trying to figure out what to do with the Brits. They could coordinate and get their armies into play up near Prussia, support the Swedes, etc. But I don't know. I don't know what all is going to happen. Anyway, don't feel like playing right away. And then I've got like these weird military reforms here, right? Austria and Prussia have to be conquered by France. I think Austria actually gets 3 more steps for free. Let's give them those. It's hard to tell because it might be that both of them have to be conquered for it to actually matter. I don't know. I don't know if that's where I want my stuff. The military reform, Austria has to be defeated twice, right? No, just once. So Austria, what was it? Yeah, they actually surrendered. So this is a thing. Austria wanted to lose a war to trigger these cards, essentially. All right, that's it then. I mean, you know, maybe they didn't want to lose the war, right? They would rather win. But they didn't want to come to some sort of negotiated free peace that doesn't qualify as a defeat. They had to take the surrender, which they did. But I think, I don't remember. Yeah, because I got because Prussia got stuff off of them too. Well, there was something I forgot before I populate the chit cup. The U.S., I had to send the required forces there. when you pull a bunch of illegal chits here, I pulled 3 umpire land chits in a row when they couldn't be picked. But now I got the coalition land. I did the neutral naval. Turks moved some troops up. They still didn't declare war this turn. I'm okay with that. Because the Russians aren't really beaten up right now. I know I left a little trailer at one point or another about, you know, if Turkey's about ready to beat Russia, what the hell happens? I'd like to investigate that a little bit more. So, look, Russia obviously will want to try to stop Turkey, but are they willing to do it in the face of like a French onslaught at the same time? Or do they just tell the French, look, you take care of the Turks, take the pressure off me and I'll take care of them, or you do it yourself. I'm not going to devote my troops to stop the Turks from winning the game. You might consider that. The thing is, the Russians aren't in a bad position necessarily. Like, they're approximately, I feel like everybody's pretty much not gained much. And in fact, the French are behind where they were historically. So, I don't know. 4 chits from both sides. The English moved Wellington, okay, big deal. But, a little bit more important, Blucher pulled away from the big French army, which, kind of a survival thing. He was guaranteed to be able to move. It sucks that it was the 4 because I couldn't gather my army, but I was able to get far enough away that it would have taken a nasty forced march to try to destroy the Prussian army. So instead, Massena and Napoleon managed to grab all of Silesia and, this is part of Silesia too. All the fortresses in Silesia. And in addition, I shifted the Army of the North forward as well. It's kind of, I've got too many armies to gather into one space, but I've got 4 up in that general theater at this point, which means I could have 2 army stacks, which might not be too bad. The French have certain advantages, but on the other hand, if they can get a 3 army stack against the 2 army stack, that's probably a better move. So I'm not quite sure what I'm doing over there. Anyway, we're going to break for a bit. I know I didn't move much, but I never do. Winter quarters came up. It's kind of interesting because a lot of chits don't count, so the winter quarters is actually like more of a proportion than you might think, because you can't pick a chit of the guy who just moved last. We had the coalition naval movement. I put another fleet, I think, over into the escorts and moved some English forces down here into the Hanseatic League. A lot of troops moved forward on Flanders. Well, actually, to take Berg away from the Bavarians, but because Reed was there. And there's a lot of weak French forces here, so I can actually concentrate on those. Of course, if the army of Spain comes up, it's not that big, but maybe I don't know that. I did screw up, at least in my understanding. Actually, I had the Prussian armies gathered already when they ran away, but they probably wanted to run away anyhow. Although losing all of Silesia might seem like a bad thing. I've got the rest of the year to get it back. And then the Russians moving forward, they're actually making an advance to the south with the hopes of catching the army of Italy under Massena down there, because that's only a single army, and my 2 can face that off. And I guess that's about it. Got a couple of land activations where, basically just kind of catching some units up, getting them closer to the fronts, whatever. Not a lot of exciting aspects with it. The English are kind of challenging Napoleon here, but he's not going to go after a small stack, I think. I don't know. I mean, there's an attritional value to just gobbling up little stuff that's kind of nearby. But then came the Empire naval move, and they ended up escaping from Brest, I don't know, beating up and sinking one of the British fleets. This is despite, and this card is weird. I don't know how to read it. So the weather gauge here, as written, every fleet of one squadron gains a +3 combat bonus during the first round. The way that would read explicitly is that with a 3-fleet squadron, you'd get a +9 on this die roll. That's kind of bullshit. I mean, like, that just wins you the battle if you've got a large fleet. And not only that, it's going to probably wipe out the enemy. You might not get to the 3 fleet sunk, but you're probably going to get the 2 fleet sunk. I'm reading it as just you get a +3 to your battle roll. That sounds more appropriate for having the wind gauge, essentially, but I don't know. It's still pretty big. That still probably means you win the battle. Anyway, that's what I did because the +9 seemed ridiculous. And anyway, the French fleet managed to escape and also beat up the fleet that was besieging or blockading Toulon down here and sunk one of the Neapolitan the squadron that was blockading Toulon and sunk one of the Neapolitan fleets. Fleets sound bigger than squadrons to me, damn it. Yeah. And it's choices like that make the rules just harder to cope with, even if they're consistent and whatever. But then things like that card, I just don't trust that they wrote it right, you know? So I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to play it the way seems more, because it's just too potent a naval card otherwise. But are there other cards that are that potent? I don't know. Not that potent. Not that potent. Yeah. And then the final Winter Quarters comes up without only knocking out one counter, which is the neutral land counter. Kind of a bone for Turkey, especially. They were looking forward to moving a little further forward, but they don't really need it. Odessa is going to fall. Kiev is definitely at risk. So we are going to see the Turks go to war, and we may well see the end of the game here. Somebody who basically did nothing all game, just going to sleaze a little victory because they have easy automatic victory conditions. And it's hard to cope with, like, preventing them, right? The French couldn't do anything to stop them, except make peace with Russia or something. The Russians could have held back their armies, I guess. We shall see. Might be able to turn around and take something back from the Turks, but honestly, it looks to me like it's going to be really, really hard to stop them. It's going to require, the Russian army coming back, and therefore the Prussians getting their asses kicked by the French, and all kind of shit like that. I don't think there's anything that's out of supply. Reed might be. He might have to make a check. Really don't like about the automatic victory condition. Look, for most of the countries, yeah, they've caused some stilted gameplay and everything. There's definitely that. Where, like, where Russia and Austria beat up on Prussia. Prussia, wanted to go back and hit them back. Russia being in a position where they just had to rush to Paris to win the game. They don't have to force France to surrender. They don't have to be winning a war or anything. And the same thing is happening here with the Turks. They don't have to be able to force a victory on Russia. They don't have to be in a sustainable situation of any sort at all. They just have to seize those territories. Now, they have to get them in supply, which means, yeah, I'm going to need, this or to drop a depot or something like that. None of which is all that hard, to be honest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we might even get it in. We might get it in a single stab. It's quite possible. If this is, yeah, that's the army. We might just get it. And would there be a possibility to undo that? Sure. If the Russian army's forced march and all that, they could stop the victory from happening. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. Like, forcing a miner to surrender can only happen in winter. It's harder to do than winning the game under these kind of circumstances, right? I don't know. Anyway, so Turkey is declaring war on the coalition, essentially. Everybody has to join. People could break the coalition to get out of it, but nobody particularly wants to. I'm coming to the conclusion that the way to stop Turkey would have been stop them from getting the Ottoman Empire. That I think is the key element here. It doesn't seem like it's that big a deal, but the fact that they're getting a victory point every fucking year once they have it means that even if they can't get the automatic victory, they're accumulating an amount of victory points that other people just have no means to get. So, yeah, like nobody else has a per turn victory point allotment that I remember, and it is the only thing in the game that feels like a sort of a glory type thing, right? The way Empires in Arms works, where each turn your activities generate a certain amount of victory points or whatever. This is the only thing that does that. Whereas everyone else is kind of in this, I can stab for victory all at once, trying to get an automatic victory. Or the other side, I just hope to be in a good position at the end of the game. In this case, I think the Turks have a pretty damn good chance of winning the game this turn, or within this year, to make it more specific. Russia's going to have to completely reprogram to deal with this. I do have to look at my leadership situation to try to figure out what happens. Turkey has some interesting cards on hand. Yeah, they have these stupid Spanish ones, but they have the Art of War. And of course, they're holding Holy Russia, which is something which would have helped their enemy. In personal life, I got up early enough, thought about going shopping. I really need to. But I'm also on only like 4 hours of sleep. So I'm like, I can put it off another day. Yeah, I don't know how to cope with this. I feel like, there we have a sleeping squirrel. No, he's not dead. They do that. They just sort of sleep out in the sun, splay themselves out to warm up. It's not particularly hot yet. It's not going to get real hot today. It's going to get to like 85. Tomorrow it's supposed to get closer to 90, which is stupid that I'm not going today. I was really trying to. I was gung-ho about it when I woke up, but not gung-ho enough. And so after eating and whatever, now I'm like, yeah, I just want to go back to sleep. Anyway, I think the move would have been somebody, probably Britain, should stop the Turks from getting the Ottoman Empire. They didn't historically get it, but also they didn't really try all that hard, right? And one of the reasons that players aren't going to do that is nobody has a fundamental interest in getting it, in trying to prevent them from getting it. In Empires in Arms, there's very, very strong reasons for Britain to try to take North Africa to get their manpower up. There's no such strong reasons in this game. Nobody has any real desire. Sure, Spain got a couple of territories, I think. They got Algiers and Morocco. But Spain couldn't defend it because they were busy on their own goals. And that's the whole thing. Everybody's got their own goals, England needed to save Portugal. They couldn't be tinkering around in North Africa. France doesn't have an opportunity. They don't have a navy. France is not going to allow the Turks into their bloc or whatever, but they'll still be operating in the same coalition. The French naval successes last turn convinced both players to throw naval chits in. I don't know if this is going to have much effect on anything, but it means the Brits can try to corral up this French fleet. Might also, I have to be careful to maintain my holding on the channel, which is really kind of the risk. That's my potent fleet. That's the one I'm going to have to use, which means I'm going to have to put something else in the channel. And it should be big enough that it's at least got a reasonable chance of holding off anything else. Because it is possible that a French force could still invade Britain. The first chit is a big coalition 1. The entire Russian force pulls back. I saw I was cheating using West Galicia to transit through again somehow or another for whatever reason. It's just so hard not to. Oh boy. This is pretty futile. But maybe it'll slow things down enough that I can get the Russian armies into play. It does mean that the Russians and Prussians aren't going to be able to work together. I'm leaving these two up here. I could have gone down and hit Messina on my own, but it would have involved crossing the river to attack him. I just don't believe I'm going to be that good on this, although maybe I should do it, because maybe it's my only decent chance here. Let me rethink that. Because I could force march reinforcements in after the battle, and I haven't gotten out of that coalition move. We captured a vessel with a honors of war, putting Reed down there, but we got a problem. We got a French army here, we got a French army here. There's just French armies everywhere, and they're not huge, but they're enough to handle these smaller stacks, anything that's not an army. And that's kind of the problem. My armies are tied down, maybe facing Napoleon or whatever. The other forces are having to run away. So the Brits ran away out of Saxony, getting away from this army. It's just an ugly, ugly situation. Wellington, I moved him into place. Probably ought to reposition his forces, his commanders. I switched forces around. Mainly, I want the Anglo-Dutch to be the guys I ship out. Right now it's the Peninsula that's going to get shipped out, I guess. Sliced down, the French did not make any attempt to intercept or withdraw. Let's take a look. It's 3 cards to 4. The Prussians chose not to go with a surprise. They figured there's going to be cav in the enemy army. Their number one guaranteed pick is an unexpected ditch, which will cancel a general charge. And their secondary is a refused flank. Now, I put a 0 commander up for this, so it's not likely to work. Let's make a quick roll. It does not, which is a pity, because the French left out a Vive l'Empereur and a rear guard, two things that would allow me to reduce my chances of a problematic situation. But I went with the big flank attack. Now, to succeed in the flank attack, I have to roll a 5 or a 6 on a die modified by a subordinate leader's combat ability. I can use, I can't remember his name. Sinclair, something. Maybe I'm mistaking that with my realtor. But he gives me a +2, which is enough that I get that flank attack off. This is a big bonus for the French. And then a general's health, for which I was going to put a +1 leader in, which also succeeds. So right off the bat, we've got a +3, they've got a -1. Size just matters so much, and this is why the 2-army stack is so powerful. Even with all those bonuses going, you know, -2 between the leader being ill and the penalty, the big +3 over here from the flank attack, it still ends up close, +8 to +7. This is because of, you know, the artillery and cav superiority that come off of a large force. A bunch of infantry aren't going to do it for you. So that gets me all the way to the top at 16, well, almost to the top. Whereas this only hits me at 12, so it's going to be a victory by the French. Massena being able to pull off a victory in this situation is a big deal, because now the Prussian army is going to be beaten up quite heavily, and Napoleon's going to be able to probably drop the coup de grace on him. So the pursuit actually happened, but it was only 3 steps, so not a massive one. The army of Italy doesn't have a lot of cav in it. Routing away. What does this all mean? So it's kind of interesting, because I can't hit it while it's demoralized. It can run away automatically. Kind of makes the attacking a demoralized force bonus largely irrelevant. There are cases where you get forced into it, like somewhere where you're just trapped and can't run. But yeah, because you wouldn't fight under those conditions unless you have huge advantages. So Napoleon can't actually do anything about that force. I guess I could try to run him away or something, but the main thing is it opens the field up in what feels like less, I don't know, less Napoleonic to me and more an earlier period where beating the field army, let's say Age of Marlborough type thing, beating the field army meant that you had free reign to go besiege things at that point. But anyway, this is just a sideshow because the Turks are quite probably going to win the game. It does enter us into a kind of weird situation, especially since it's summer, when all the chits are going to get played out, which means I want to rally him this turn, but I don't want to do it until the last chit that I can, right? Because any earlier means Napoleon can go beat up on my army. And that means that, like, a lot of stuff is going to be delayed based on the chit pulls and whatnot into this weird sort of waiting game that just happens. Now, It still can happen in other seasons, but in summer, there's no incentive to try to get the jump. This guy really wants to rally his force because otherwise he takes an attrition check if he doesn't. And I am still debating going shopping. I know I made my decision not to, and it's like 3 now, which is fine because it's a weekend. It doesn't really matter. Like, I don't have to worry about that 5 p.m. kind of thing. But it is going to be hot as it gets. And I'm kind of hoping tomorrow I can go earlier. Anyway, I don't know. Plus, that allows me to delay and not go. All right. But either way, I gotta brew some more tea. Neutral land. The only neutral is Spain at this point. Well, Austria too. Okay. And neither one really wants to do anything. Then we get an Empire Land 4. Now this is interesting. So similar to the situation that Turkey's in, again, we want to delay what we do. Oh, well, okay. Similar to the situation with this army. Again, Turkey wants to delay what they do. France wants to delay what they do. So we're probably not going to activate much in this. But it led me to thinking, oh, you know, I can knock Prussia out of the war at this point, gain access through their territory, and, you know, be able to maybe take Russia down. Yeah, there's a problem. This is kind of an issue with France as well, because Paris is always important. You got to take Berlin, Königsberg, and Warsaw if they own it, which they do. Makes Prussia pretty hard to beat, actually. But the big problem is Berlin. Now, I have the advantage that an Empire land is going to be the last land thing. And again, it's summer, so I can time this well and everything. But yeah, it's kind of annoying that I'm going to be taking, unlike the fortress cities, the non-fortress ones, I either have to park an army on it, right, or time it and get a force in there at the right moment, basically. And that's the problem with them, because a small force isn't going to be able to hold up necessarily. It might be relieved, even by another small force. So it really complicates the surrender terms in a way that, like, the fortresses really don't, because a smaller force probably isn't going to be able to take a fortress as easily. Although it's still possible. So I don't know. Maybe I'm over concerned about this, but I find these particularly hard because I have to station a unit there. That's the big problem, and maybe it's the memory issue more than anything else that's problematic. Just taking a pass. This is one that's hard to find units that I can actually move. It's only the best commanders who can move on this one, and it's happening so early in the turn. I just don't see much point to it. Game's come up with one of those anomalous situations that I just noticed that, you know, this is part of the problem with the naval system. My chits, I drew another Empire land held off. An Empire naval. Great. Well, they're not allied, so it's not a problem. But France and Turkey could have been allied. And then this situation can't exist, where they both have fleets in the same, well, they both have, the stacking in a region, in a naval region, is too great. As far as I can tell, you can't do that, but I don't know, what do? You preclude the alliance because they can't meet the stacking? Does somebody have to retreat? I'm sure you can make something up, there's no question there, but it's like, wow, that could have been a real problem. Like, that could be a situation where, hey, the rules don't cover this. I'm not allowed to have 5 fleets in there, but there they are. You know, I don't know. We come up with another stacking problem that I just ran into. These fleets could move over, grab, and again, I could have planned for this. 1, 2, 3, pick up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, try to pick these guys up. Yeah, there's a problem. I don't have a leader in either of these, so I can't stack. It's just such a fucked up situation. This whole game has so many, like, it has weird things about the way. Now, again, you can make something up like, oh, hey, I've got a leader in reserve. I could throw him down there. But it's just got such weird stacking rules where you're not allowed to have the troops because you don't, in this case, it's troops. The Navy's was a different one. You're not allowed to have troops together because you don't have a leader who can command them all. Just so different from any other design that I've ever seen. And I don't know, it raises new kinds of issues. Sorry, somebody walking by. It's such a rarity on my street that, like, I tend to look, but it's Sunday. People are going to be out here walking. Yeah, it raises such a, and no, it wasn't like a pretty girl. It was a fat guy. You know, it's just like, it's just curiosity here. Not me being pervy. Not that I wouldn't be, but it's such a weird situation, and they don't really resolve it all. You know, and it's part of the problem is there are enough weird little designs in this game that aren't covered well enough. Now, if these were the only things that were wrong, that would be fine, but so much of the core is just so broken too. The fleet had another couple of effective uses. That fleet, their most powerful fleet, went to the channel, found that the fleet defending the channel was actually weaker than I thought, beat it up, sinking another ship, just a 0 modifier that is not, you know, you want to have a squadron, not fleet, a squadron containing a lot of bonuses, 3 ships with the highest bonuses to do your dirty work. Now, this fleet has completed its movement. I've released another 3 fleet. I could go blockade something, but the English would have the capability to gather together a powerful fleet to hit that. I don't mind so much if they hit this with a powerful fleet, I guess. I'm not really sure. They managed to drive off the blockade of Antwerp, but they have no more movement left. And I don't think I want to send a weaker fleet out to do any of the fighting. Since I don't have enough ships to blockade everything at this point, it's getting closer. You know, I've killed a few British fleets in these last turns, and there's a fair amount of them over there in the escort box, unfortunately for the Brits. But, oh man, I don't know. It's just, again, the way the naval rules work is so odd. And it's not really explainable as being, you know, an advantage over how other games handle the navies. I'm thinking here of something like War and Peace or Empires and Arms, where it's really just the number of fleets that you have, right? Here it's like you want to piece together the right level of combat leadership in your fleet. You have a lot of leaders, but the leaders aren't in charge. Like, the leaders are tied to their ships, which is just weird. So, like, the size of your navy might depend on the potential size of your navy might depend on what admirals you've had that have been killed, because you can't rebuild them. So, like, you know, if the actual admirals are killed with a die roll of 12, that hurts you in a way that, like, it hurts your capability of producing a fleet, which is just completely different from anything else and is hard to really explain in any sort of way. Yeah. So I think that's all I'm doing with my fleets. But I'm like, geez, I don't know. And now I do have a big fleet that's exposed, so the Brits will probably try to take it down. But they also need to cover the channel, so it's like complicated. Another Empire land out and another Empire naval. And here I take station in the channel, trying to set things up so that I can get a crossing. Maybe be able to take Britain out. I don't remember what Britain's surrender rules are. London, but what else? It's going to be here. Just London. So yeah, if I can get an in-supply force into London, I'm in okay shape. That could be the army of Spain here, but it has no depot, which means I can't supply, but I could drop a detachment off. So there's that. Yeah, the army shouldn't have detachments with it, but you know, this detachment could run its way up and generate supplies going in. Because the thing is, this is 3-4. I can't get supplies to London. With nothing in Britain itself, this is somewhat problematic. I dropped a couple of blockading fleets in place. There's a possibility I could take Britain out this turn. Of course, it doesn't matter if Turkey wins. Gets a land move. They've used their two best ones now. So it's a time when, you know, I have to be a little bit careful, but I don't have any leaders that are that shitty out there. So I reinforced the Prussian armies. They're still demoralized, but that's okay. And they'll be in a little better shape if they have to fight another battle. All the forces over here, I don't want to move. I want to keep them as kind of a threat against the French if the French go for Britain or something. I don't know. But I got to consider possibilities of like English fleet or coalition fleets carrying, well, English fleets. Because you have to loan ships if they're going to help someone else. If they're going to carry other people's troops. Coalition fleets delivering troops into Britain is another possibility. But it's going to be kind of hard to get them to London. Might be able to do it with a second activation, though. Second of the Empire land move markers, they've gotten the two worst ones, which means I'm going to have, you know, the capability to move everything. So I just delayed. Then we got the first of the coalition naval. And we made several attacks on this big French fleet out in the Channel. Unfortunately, the defeats that we took made our fleets kind of painful. So like Nelson's fleet was only 2 ships and had to beat its way through. We used a combined Russian-Dutch fleet, the Dutch being Prussian allied, to try to combine against it. We used a number of different attacks. The Brits only lost one more fleet in these attempts, but they failed to clear the Channel. This is problematic. If that other coalition naval move comes up, and what's left can't really fight its way through, is what I've judged. If that second coalition fleet comes through, we've got a serious problem if an Empire land is due to come after that. we got a serious problem either way. But that next fleet move could allow this to be beaten back and thus jeopardize any kind of supplies the French might push through. But the French could also just count on, even if the coalition navy comes up last, the French could count on being able to beat the Brits and push the army of Spain into England. So, yeah. I forgot what I had to do and pulled the Empire Land 1 and said, yeah, there's nothing I want to do. I was thinking the French. The Turks had stuff they wanted to do. So they ended up capturing Neminov, but did not take Odessa. And this is a problem, and I need a supply wagon here. I also forgot to put all the feudals on the board. They're on the board now, and I moved them, whatever. But now that hits me on a coalition land 4. Now, the Prussians managed to rally and pull back on Warsaw, which is important because that's one of the cities that has to fall for Prussia to surrender. But I have to think about the Russians. And it's when I started thinking about the Russians that I'm like, wait a minute, this is the third activation that I had for the Empire. I needed to move my Turks. So I rolled back to do that, and then I realized I didn't have their units on the board. Now, the Russian army, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, can't really screen Kiev. These are going to be able to get into Kiev anyway, unless I force march. And given that Odessa held out, that's going to require an additional activation. Oh, this guy activated. No. Yeah, this guy activated as well. That's the Sultan there. In command of a depot. But the army activated. It's going to have to do a second activation to take Kiev. I'm going to have to do a second activation to try to take Odessa. And I don't really have the leadership to do that. So it's kind of problematic. I think I'll take the shot on Odessa first. But I think the Russians are going to just hold off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could move close here, but this is the thing. These guys could come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They could skim in. The Turks do not have supplies, so they wouldn't be able to hold Kiev in supply if a Russian army is here. That may be my safest move. Move the Russians right next to the Turkish force. That should save the day. The question remains, do the Russians want to save the day? You know, I think so. But yeah, things went really, like, the odds on Odessa were not very good because I didn't have a leader, I didn't have artillery support, etc. I didn't have a big enough force in play to take it. I've reinforced the main army of the Ottomans up here, but it's not enough to take on the Russians. The situation the French wanted, the coalition naval chit came up, but they managed to beat that French fleet and get Nelson to join a remaining fleet, get another 3 fleet over here. Still blockaded over here. There's some possibility of danger, but the 2 Empire naval chits have already come up. So it ain't going to happen this turn. We're not going to lose Britain this turn, which is a big deal, I think. Because if we look at the French automatic conditions, they have to hold a bunch of stuff at the end of the turn. Oh, this is not the right one. Sorry. The campaign one. Okay, they have to hold a bunch of stuff and have conquered Britain at some point during the game. So, and what's interesting with Turkey, must have created the Ottoman Empire, not must currently have the Ottoman Empire under control. So just having done that has, like with the French taking Britain out, if they took Britain out, would be sufficient to more or less make a very easy victory condition. Now, for the French, it's really easy because all we'd need is Flanders, Holland, which you can reasonably get, Hanseatic League, which we can easily get, Geneva, Neufchâtel, again, Neufchâtel is easily taken, Piedmont, Genoa, Tuscany, and the papacy, which we can easily take. So it's very easy for France to get the achievements if they ever defeat Britain. And basically, if they manage to do that, it's a sort of this, defeating Britain doesn't weaken the Brits particularly. I mean, it knocks them out for a while, whatever. But it wouldn't, it doesn't generate any kind of situation that would force Britain to start losing. There aren't those kind of consequences, right? It's just, oh, hey, I happen to have done this. And given that there was that conquer Britain, I kind of feel like must have created the Ottoman Empire. I was taking it as you have to hold it. So now that could be taken away from Turkey. But I'm not sure that's intended. Turkey having achieved it may be enough that even if they lose it later, it's not applicable. I'm not sure. Again, this game is so full of this kind of stuff. But with the Britain one, it's very clear. You just have to have conquered Britain, or the continental system has been in effect for at least 2 winter victory phases. Don't know how the continental system is to be applied or whatever, but yeah, this was a major stop. Like, that threat of a French invasion is really, it's almost a matter of if you beat Britain, you win. It really is, because the other things that you have to do are things that France should be able to do. Now, I haven't managed them yet, but so we had kind of 2 players running into, we're almost winning. Now, the problem with some of the goals that France has is that they have to, that taking them is hard. So, for example, I would need the papacy as something from Austria. I think that's the only thing remaining from Austria that I need. Yeah. And I could take that, right? But I couldn't take that in with the peace conditions that I took for Italy and whatnot. Of course, those aren't necessary for the victory conditions. The papacy is kind of a weird little situation, but it's like, yeah, which are you going for? Are you going for more power, where I took Lombardy and Venetia, and those were necessary, but they're not for the victory conditions here, unless I think there are GE things that are not on that list. Maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah. So like Genoa is there. Oh no, they're on there. All right. Okay. Maybe they're all okay. I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is that, like, obviously if I was going for the automatic victory and had already knocked Britain out, I would focus on getting the papacy, or I would focus on getting Neufchâtel, which I want to get, but yeah, it's not trivial. I mean, that's the cost of a province for a piece of shit, basically. It's worth like $1 or something. I don't know. Anyhow, final empire chit comes up. There's one more chit in there. It's a neutral naval, I think. I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. The Spaniards aren't doing anything. But Napoleon is slamming into the Prussian army. I've got 2 armies. He's got 2 armies. We're hoping that the Grand Armée and Napoleon's bonuses and whatnot help us out here. The French left a number of cards. They're looking at 5-2, right? Left a number of cards on the table, canceling the Grand Charge. That could be useful. Cancels Cav Pursuit. Yeah, we're planning on winning. Another Pursuit roll 1. We don't really care what happens as long as we win the battle and then win the siege. Now, Napoleon had to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had to spend all his movement. So he gets 1 siege attempt at Warsaw. But what did he choose? He chose Rivalry, which is going to cause a -1 to the enemy die roll, and a Grand Battery that's going to give him +1 because he has enough artillery there. Assuming, you got a +1 on this. Yep. They took a defense in depth, which will just reduce pursuit losses. And a panic, and I think I put a 0 on there, on the off chance that I win the battle. But we don't get that card. So that's okay. Play pretty hard. They get a +10 to Prussia's +2 here. Nice roll for the Prussians, but equally nice for the French. It's going to be a big win. That is, the French need Königsberg as well. Basically, the Prussian positioning forced it so that I couldn't take everything. I could have conceivably marched from here up to Königsberg, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope. Yeah, so Königsberg was out of reach no matter what. I thought that I could get... You know, I could have if I had done a double move. But here's the thing. It doesn't... Yeah, I fucked up is basically what happened. I should have set myself up so I could siege Königsberg and maybe take Berlin with something up here. But instead I went for a slower movement. It's not that big a deal, but it does mean that Prussia's not going to fall yet. They're going to probably fall next turn. And meanwhile, this isn't necessarily bad. Russia gets to concentrate on Turkey, beat them back, and then maybe, I don't know, Turkey may come to some sort of peace agreement. Here's the problem. Turkey can sneak their way in at any point. Like, if there's not an enforced peace. Can you negotiate an enforced peace? Maybe. It seems to say any terms. So, sure, why not? But yeah, because Turkey doesn't want to get the shit kicked out of them by the Russians, which is going to happen if they continue fighting. But they might not be pushed into an enforced peace, and they might be able to pull back and still have kind of a threat in place or something. So it's like really this weird situation where Turkey's close to winning the game. Russia has to try to defeat France, you know, prevent France from beating them. And I don't know how to stop it, you know? It's like, the one thing is the coalition goes first next turn, which means that that if Turkey doesn't come to a peace, their army is vulnerable to the Russians. And without their army, I'm not sure they can really do the fight. They can rebuild the army, though. So it's, I don't know, it's like this mixture of like different, and plus the army's probably not destroyed. There's enough force there that I can probably build something up. So I think I want to stay in the war with the Turks. Anyway, we're pretty sure that the Turks can't take Kiev this turn because of supply limitations. Unless I could get, I don't know, if I take Odessa, I would have to get the depot in Odessa to do a sea supply, assuming I don't even have it there. Yeah, I don't see a way that the Turks can pull off a win on this shit. They may want to pull away, though. Or not. I don't know. Attrition is ugly. And the rest of the French units, yeah, France could have probably engineered with double moves an attack that killed Prussia. I still don't want to use the Boulogne camp because I think that's most useful in destroying Russia, because Russia's hard to dig into deep enough. So I guess I just moved the rest of my empire units. In a land battle against the Dutch here and take Amsterdam. I don't know. Keep working. Lots more units to move. Only remaining really important thing is Dresden fell to Davout here. I shifted Massena over here to help guard. Basically, he's guarding the supply depot with his zone to prevent it from being attacked. It doesn't really work because the Prussian army is bigger, but he's supporting this, and basically we're in a position where we can take Königsberg next turn, probably. We're also, you know, threatening Berlin from here, which we're not really in range, and that is the Army of the North, which does not have a supply depot. But I have a backup supply depot here that I could pull forward if that works. The question is, of course, does it work? And that's a big if. I may have a detachment somewhere in here, or something that could drop a detachment. A bunch of Italians, some Swiss, no detachments. And I would have to, oh no, I have an Italian detachment here that I could peel off, and I have a Swiss detachment, so I could actually create supplies that way. By breaking core down, whatever. There's so much that's just so weird in this game that it's hard to get your mind around it all. So I think we can take Prussia down next turn. I thought I was going to be able to do it this turn, which kind of sucks because it means I'm not going to be able to take Russia out in time, which means Austria is going to be back in the war. Of course, I don't have them in the continental system, so maybe that doesn't really matter. Spain's not in the continental system either, and they have a decent amount of trade. So I feel like they definitely would have to be part of it. So I'm not going to be able to start collecting up, you know, turns where I've got Britain really on the rocks for that. A better chance is to win the naval wars. Of course, these look like French units, and they are. They're French units blockading British units. Interesting. Okay. I will do cleanup, and there's not going to be any surrenders or anything, except maybe Turkey. I got to think about that a little bit. Note, instead of using Davout to try to beat up on some of these units, I don't really care about trying to weaken the Prussian army, right? But I actually, because in the course of the mandatory peace, Prussia can probably rebuild its army. This is a very different situation than from Empires in Arms, and War and Peace for that matter. War and Peace, you very seldom run out of, I think, the manpower on a lot of the countries. Prussia might run out of their force pool. But this game has both a force pool and a manpower factor. War and Peace sort of does too, because of the production cities. And what that means is, because the force pools are pretty small compared to your build ratios, you're able to like field your army in a couple of years. In Empires and Arms, you can't rebuild that Prussian army if it's destroyed. Like, I mean, you could over the course of the 10 years, but you can't do it in, you can't like lose a war and rebuild. So like the attritional side of like busting up the Prussian army is an incredibly powerful threat. It's not as big a threat here, and trying to like just beat up the Prussians doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me to lose some French. I don't have that many left to build, but also it's still fairly early in the year and I'm fighting Russia, so, all right. I think Turkey's is not going to look for a peace. I think they're willing to lose their army for the shot at keeping Russia off their feet and maybe being able to steal a win out of the game as a whole, because I don't see another way of stealing the win. Plus, they're gathering victory points well enough. If they surrender, they can rebuild their army. They don't have a lot of money. That's their one big problem, and nobody really wants to fund them. I mean, France might, but they don't because of the stupid automatic, victory threat. They're like, yeah, I don't know. Turkey's not going to be that big a player in a war. They're a distraction, that's all. Anyway, time to look at the Banania rules to see what they are. And essentially, it's, for the continental system, essentially it's everything from St. Petersburg to Trieste. Now, this does not make sense to me, right? Let's say I defeat Prussia and I defeat Russia and knock them both out. Now, obviously, the 2-year thing makes it impossible to keep it up, right? But to me, it feels like Trieste is a lot less important. Granted, Austria can ship goods, through Trieste and whatever, but it still only is generating a port value of 2, if that's the case, whatever, right? Whereas, if Turkey were included in the continental system, that feels like a bigger thing. So I still don't want to go with the Banania rules. I had thought maybe it was to Smyrna or something, but no, it's just to Trieste, which makes sense because it's all the ports on the European continent. But again, I don't feel like if Trieste was the only port that was open, that it would necessarily be effective. And obviously, if it was the only one that was open, I could blockade it, right? And prevent the English from shipping through it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I look at this and Spain is only worth 5. Turkish, granted, the trade is going to be, the overland trade through Turkey is going to probably be less than others, but it's worth 5 on the coastal areas that touch. The islands don't count, and Scandinavia doesn't count. And again, I feel like, the way things stand, Turkey can kind of stand in for Spain if I were doing it. Right? It's not like Spain is going to be shifting goods through France under the continental system either. So it's like, the argument that I have for Trieste is that, yeah, some goods would come in and Trieste might become more important than its 2 points would indicate. Likewise, Russia here is worth, what, 4? 5. I got Riga too. Okay, but it's like most of these countries are not worth a hell of a lot, and I feel like, you know, Trieste or Prussia or something like that just not being included wouldn't be that major an effect. Anyway, I'm willing to say it's not in place right now. But if it gets very much close, you know, very close to that kind of situation, I'm willing to bend those rules a little bit. Obviously, it's not close. Naples is part of it. Spain is open. Trieste, obviously. Russia, Prussia. So there's kind of a question of, yeah, does including Prussia in it make a lot of sense when it's just a two-pointer? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm going to go more with some kind of general feel for the amount of points of trade that Britain can accumulate than just some strict geographical covering Europe when Spain doesn't even make sense because it wouldn't be an ingress to any of the other nations. You know, I don't know. Anyway, coalition gets the first chit, and Kutuzov is slamming into the Turks. He did this after recapturing, after driving them out of there. They got a successful withdrawal there, or avoidance it's called. Took the fortress, and then is hitting them in Bessarabia. Let's take a look at what cards were picked now. The Russians got 4 because they have their reforms in before 1800. That brings up an interesting thing. Prussia and Austria get their reforms in 1813. Wonder what's moving around out there. But this card almost ensures that they are going to get them earlier than that. And it's not noted in the rules, of course. I thought there was something where they get their reforms if they you know, were defeated once or twice. I seem to remember something like that. I can't find anything of that nature, so the hell with it. Anyway, what the Russians didn't pick, they didn't pick a crest. They're going to have artillery advantage. They didn't pick Battle of Nations because they're not facing multiple nations. They did take the year 2 soldiers. That'll give them a +1. They do have the morale for that. And a Viva la Emperor. I put a shit leader up there to trigger that. Who does not? But I'm counting on winning. For the Turks, Flooded River wasn't going to do anything. I could play it and fake or whatever. But they have a flank attack. They don't have to roll for this, but they do have to roll for this part. They have the 8 steps. Their commanding sub-leader. So the subordinate leader can add his combat bonus, which is a +2. I've got a very good leader, and this doesn't risk his life. So we get that big flank attack with a big +3 on the die roll. That's going to be a major factor. The way the cards kind of can throw a huge spanner in the works. You think you've got everything settled. I still think the Russians have this extreme advantage because they've got 2 armies. And again, 2 armies gets to make up a lot. I probably have double artillery and double cav, so that's +4 right there. I've got better leadership as well, but that's not merely a size thing. Also throw in their big Art of War card for an extra 2. The Turks are able to get close with this. It's +10 to +8. I'm actually not playing Bagration for the Russians. I'm going with just one of St. Priest, who's a +1 leader instead, to avoid a death chance. +10 gets me to 14. I was hoping, you know, I would roll the 6 or more. +8 gets me to 16. So the Turks actually win this. And this maybe means that they got another crack at winning the game. Maybe. Kind of a weird thing. and it's not explained that I can find. There's a parenthesis on this leader and a number of the Turkish leaders. The Turks don't have a lot of leaders overall. What I suspect is that those parenthesized, not bracketed, bracketed means they come in through a card. Those parenthesized leaders are meant to not be killed. That one just died. I can't find a rule on it. There are also, I think, Navy units that are parenthesized. And again, I think they're meant that if they get destroyed or something through normal means, they will not. They probably weren't meant to die. But the problem is, for the Turks, all their leaders of that type are actually pretty good. So it feels kind of wrong, but it also feels kind of wrong that I'd run out of leaders, which is very possible for the Turks. Spain might be able to too. They don't have a hell of a lot. Like, well, I mean, look at Prussia, you know, they don't have a lot of reserve leaders. They have 2 armies in the field though. So I don't know, but I'm playing it as written and whatever. I didn't check the second. Oh, I didn't check my Russian leaders. That's what I didn't check. It would be kind of fucked up if they got free passes on those, because they pick those as their losses every time. Like, okay, maybe it comes in next turn or next year or something if that's the case. But it's like, you would still pick that so you don't lose a permanent leader instead. And the fact that they're good and you can select them as your subordinate commander who can give you the +1. I mean, I don't know. Turkey needs all the help it can get probably in military, but you know, I got these other people like Muhammad Ali here. Mehmet Ali, same thing. There are no vowels, but yeah, it's a big deal that I just beat the Russian army, I think. The Russians weren't demoralized, and by the way, if they demoralized the Turks, they would probably wipe out the Turkish army. They have a lot of fucking cav in that Russian army right now. But yeah, we fell back not demoralized. We lost St. Priest though, so good thing we didn't play Bagration in there. He would have been taking the bullet in that case. And I guess I try to find other coalition units that I want to move and try to see what I'm going to do. The Russians recharged their army pretty easily. They had enough reserves in near range that they could basically get their armies back up to full strength. So the Turks are, again, not really in a position, but maybe I'm wondering if I can get to Kiev safely without going near this. Because if I go near this, I cause issues. 1, 2, 3. See, the problem is I don't have supply wagons. And I lost my supply wagon. So I don't think the Turks can win this time. Because the Russians overran the supply wagon that they had. And I may have another one kicking around somewhere. I see only 1 dead. And I think they have 2. So there may be another one on the way. But that one isn't going to do, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 wouldn't get me there. 1, 2, 3, 4 wouldn't get me there. I'm going to need a supply wagon and this location, which is kind of the problem. I also pulled back big away from that army of Spain or whatever. It's not that big, but it's big enough that with the extra couple artillery and everything, it's just going to be more painful than these little stacks that I've got forward. Yeah, maybe a bunch of them, you know, maybe multiple battles could wear this thing out, but it just doesn't seem worth it, especially since Prussia's probably going to surrender before winter, which means none of the miners are going to change hands until the Prussians surrender, which is just, to me, that's really fucked up. That's one of the big problems with this game, is that the miners they just don't feel, they feel too resilient to me. But that's compared to other games. Maybe it's a wise choice. I don't know. All right. Empire movement shit. And the Turks moved some of their forces, some coming forward. This guy took Odessa, falling back. I don't think I can win the game right now, basically. Had I demoralized the Prussian army, maybe. It still would be hard because the supply situation, I think, would be untenable. But over here, we got Napoleon Massena gathered up Napoleon's army and marched on the Prussian army. The Prussians intercepted. Kind of have to clear that army out of the way to get to Königsberg. That's how I'm seeing it. So we pulled cards. It's the French are attacking. What do I got? I got a square, which gets rid of the grand charge, but it requires a morale check. Rear guard reduces pursuit, increases pursuit. That's nice, but I felt like it's more important to win the battle than to win the pursuit. So a redoubt that gets me a +1. And then an unexpected ditch to cancel the grand charge, just in case that came up. What did the Russians, and I've got a leader backing that, a +1. Russians gave up an ambush, which they could not use, and put forward Vive l'Empereur, which gives them a better morale. Let's see what we get. There's an interception, so the Prussians have a +1 there. With river crossing and the interception and everything, it comes out to +9 +3. This is where the French are not using a +2 leader. And our numbers get us pretty high. And not at all high. So 2 to a 6 CL. And the Prussians are in trouble. In a demoralization with a 10-step pursuit. You don't want to lose to 3 armies. The French able to make their way towards Königsberg. I could force march and try to smack my way through that. Maybe take Königsberg this turn. However, there are advantages to me waiting until winter to force Prussia to surrender. Notably, that I can get some crap like Neufchâtel if I can get a unit into there. Right now I'm working on the Empire Land 3 move. French take a lot. They take Hanover. They're moving into Hesse here. We took Magdeburg. We took Wittenberg. We were able to take Magdeburg because these 2 units, neither one could reinforce. Probably wouldn't want to anyway, but neither one could intercept into this hex because there was a detachment there. So, you know, these guys were full up under their command. They can't go reinforce that additional force with what they're able to command. See, what feels to me is that you should be able to reinforce into a hex regardless of sort of the command capacity, with the idea that, like, you know, you could kind of, I don't know, I'm thinking of things like cordons and stuff like that, where you keep a main force behind. Now, you can do that as long as the reinforcing force can command all of it together, but I guess the consideration I have is that, yeah, it makes sense that you can only move so many troops, but commanding them in battle should be a little bit more relaxed than that, to some extent. You know, you're not having to handle, you know, all the logistical considerations and everything. that your command staff probably couldn't handle. On the other hand, the way the game works, it kind of wouldn't make sense, because you wouldn't want an army, which is really probably stretching the command capabilities of the overall commander, to be able to reinforce, into another large force. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. The fact that you can throw 3 armies in a hex, and move them all together, feels like, yeah. I really wish it were just a movement-oriented restriction, not a stacking restriction. The fact that that command and control is a stacking restriction really grates on me, and it feels like it complicates the play as well as the thinking and whatnot involved. I'm much more used to, yeah, if you can get all the troops there, that's fine. And that would make things like marching to the sound of guns and stuff more believable. I guess you could tailor your forces, again, so that they can reinforce into each other and support each other, and thus cover a little bit more ground. But, man, it feels like it would be a hell of a lot of work to do. What it comes down to is, you kind of have to hit their big force. And if you got a bigger force than they do, they're not going to be able to, respond to it. And I guess that's kind of the thing, is that an army going up against that cordon type situation, it'll just break through a cordon of weak forces. The only way you're going to be able to march to the sound of guns effectively against an army is with another army. Unless, of course, the army is really, really weak, like that Spanish army now. But it's not that weak. It's still bigger than the stuff that it can face. I mean, it's like eight steps instead of 6. And it's got a couple extra artillery with it. And it's got the capability to carry leaders and all kind of other toys with it. But I definitely feel like the French are spread too thin among 5 armies. However, it's kind of working for me right now. All right, that's all we're doing for now. Probably going to try to sleep at some point soon. I don't know if it's going to work, but yeah, I really need to go shopping. I need to shuffle those. It's Monday. I actually pulled my cart out. I got it down there somewhere. Can't see it. And put my little milk crate outside that I haul stuff with. And then I thought, I kind of have to poop, and I didn't, turned out. And now it's gotten to be like 1:30 or so. And it would be fine, I could go. But I have 1 egg left. I have other stuff too. But I'm down to 1 remaining egg. There's one that's cracked that is spoiled. But in the one that I have left, I'm going to have to crack while it's in the container, because it's stuck by crap from the one that cracked. And I have obviously I have enough food to last me probably weeks, but I'm out of everything that I can make easily. But part of the problem is, and I got up early enough, like 7:30. It was chilly out, but I didn't want to go right away. Maybe a little too chilly. And then, I don't know, it's just sort of settled in with this, my ankles, my back, everything hurts. And it probably will tomorrow too. I figure I can wait 1 more day. Plus, my camera is out for delivery today. So, finally, it was supposed to come on Friday, but whatever. Anyway, I'm going to pull a chit. I'm not guaranteeing I'm not going today. I might just motivate and head out, but I don't think I will. I definitely wanted to do was recover Blucher from demoralization. The army is not capable of standing up to anything, and risking 2 armies, that's a lot of money, right? Is a very, very high cost. So I don't want to defend Königsberg because I know the French have to get that to make me surrender. And I would rather preserve my army. Same kind of feeling, as happens in Empires in Arms too, where it's like, ooh, now in Empires in Arms, preserving the Prussian army is something different. Because here it can be rebuilt, but the armies themselves are an expensive thing. At $8 each, they're like, an infantry corps on its own. Maybe a little more than that. But an infantry corps costs 6 plus 1 for the artillery. So it's approximately the same. I got a coalition 4. I don't know that there's many coalition units I want to move. I think just that. Not seeing anything else. But I wanted to focus on that because to me it's vital to try to hide from the army. Now, I could have left it demoralized, but the problem is then it would have to take attrition checks. And, I don't have a lot here. I have the guard cav, that's 1 step, and I have 1 step of cav here. I literally can't afford to lose a step or I lose an army. And that would be lousy. Empire land phase, I'm trying to engineer things so that I can get, not this turn, but next turn I have a supply wagon. I need 1 supply wagon to get me supplies to Odessa. I need another one to get me from Odessa to Kiev, to make it even at all possible. I can buy a supply wagon in the army. Unfortunately, I can only get it as far as here without forced marching, but supply wagons on their own, I don't know if they're even, they can be hurt by attrition. They have this stupid 4 movement points, but I can, dispatch a leader, and if I'm moving, if it counts as a single step, which is sort of the worst it would count as, it can force march. So it can move 6 movement points on its own and then be absorbed or whatever. So I guess I can figure out a way of getting it there. I'm really, it's so strange because the French supply wagons have a 6 movement allowance. Everybody else has a 4. The 4s really kind of fuck things up because it means your army can't move very fast, but it maybe doesn't if you move the supply wagon on its own. Just detach it and move it on its own. And an army, at least, will have additional leaders in it that you can commit to just moving the supply wagon. So it kind of doesn't matter that it's got a 4 movement point allowance, except that it can't force march beyond 6. Another of those cases where the game generates really weird kinds of thinking that we're not used to in wargaming because of the differences in the system and everything. That don't really, it's not like some kind of different strategic insight into the game or anything like that. It's just the mechanical aspects of making your pieces work is painfully different. I'm not used to that with strategic games. I'm used to that with tactical games, where it takes a while to get used to how to manipulate your troops, and that's kind of a big thing. If you're looking at something like Great Battles of History or Musket and Pike or CWB or whatever, you're like, oh, this is how I get these, troops to do what I think they should be doing. But here, it just feels different to me, mainly because usually the big, even if there's sort of an operational strategic, like this is close to, because of the hexes and whatnot, because of being able to align troops here, there, and whatever, it's still strategic, but it ends up just putting this additional tax that I'm just unused to. And that's really, really hard to cope with. A tactical game is usually all about manipulating your forces. Like, that's the hurdle you have to get over when you're facing a new tactical system. With a strategic game, there's usually all this other stuff going on. In this one, there certainly is, right? And then I also have that. And am I gaining that much from it? I don't think so. Like, again, I feel like War and Peace does a better job on that sort of strategic hex map version of what you're looking, what we have. But that may just be familiarity. But anyway, I think I'm pretty much out of 2 initiative leaders that I want to play. I do have, I do want to get the Swiss somewhere. I don't remember where, because I can't fucking remember. I got to get something to Neufchâtel, and the Swiss would have been really the thing to get there, so that I can capture that in winter without charging it against the victory conditions that I get from forcing Prussia to surrender. It's so fucked up that you want, like, you want to get through the winter and capture what you can in a victorious war. And either make peace that winter or make peace after that winter. It doesn't really matter. But, like, I don't want to make peace this turn because it would cost the autumn turn. It would cost me all the minors that I could take, whatever they are. And that may be a lot. Right now, we're looking at Saxony, Hanover, Holland. Hesse is soon to fall, So, I mean, maybe it's not that big a deal if I take Neufchâtel as a victory condition in the peace. But on the other hand, I would kind of like to take Polish territory. And the Prussians have Masovia, Posen, and East Galicia. I could make a Poland out of those 3. But 3 is all I can take. Which means everything that I need to take from Prussia that's sort of to this side, I have to actually conquer. I mean, it's just kind of a pain in the ass. But there's things I don't need. Like, I think Ansbach is Prussian. I'm not positive about that. I know Brunswick is. Is Ansbach? Ansbach sounds like it's Prussian. Yeah. And I mean, look, can I afford to take them? Yeah, I don't know. But I'll take what I can. But I would really like Neufchâtel is a necessity for me to hit my automatic victory conditions. And Poland is very attractive for me, especially if I'm going to be invading Russia. And a big Poland is especially attractive. So, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Coalition naval phase, the Russians ended up scaring the Turks into Salonika. As far as I can tell, there's nothing special about the Bosporus. You can sail through it. Same thing with the Gibraltar. Would seem like at least there would be an automatic interception in either one. But anyway, the Brits managed to break the blockade here, but then move back. Don't really have a great deal of use. I can pull these guys out as well. I pulled the Anglo-Dutch army out of the peninsula and put it up here in Hansa, and I'm gathering forces in that. I got to get the peninsular army as well. Do I want to take the Portuguese with me? Well, they are the army. So yeah, let's grab them as well. That'll put something in Britain itself, which will help defend me at least for a little while. I'll end up shifting it to the continent, but I don't know. I may just drop it in the continent somewhere. Not sure where though. The second winter quarters, that's going to end the turn. Don't think there's any attrition to be done. I don't think there's any peace to be had. Again, France is going to gain too much off of Prussia in the winter phase if they do things right. I am a little pissed off though. I didn't get to move my Swiss, who would have headed for Neufchâtel. That may mean that I don't get like East Galicia or something, which will kind of suck. So I really would like it. The Turks don't want to surrender at this point. They still have a shot, and especially with the French attacking Russia, it becomes particularly advantageous. One thing is that continental system, it only counts winter turns. So there's kind of a nice thing. I don't have to have it continuously for 2 years. I have to have it for 2 winter years, 2 winter turns in a row to meet the requirements, which means that Austria, while they're coming back in August or in autumn, I could conceivably smack them around in autumn and winter and force another surrender and force them back into the continental system. So I don't have to have everything under the continental system under that time. Anyway, I don't think that there's anything interesting happening in the peace or attrition phase. I'll come back if there is, but here for the winter turn of 1810 coalition land shit. I bought the depot for the Turks. We'll see if I can figure out what to do with it. First thing is, it's a 3-point movement shit. I don't want to move Kutuzov, although normally in the winter you want to move your units, right? But here's the thing. As long as Kutuzov remains an active threat, the Turks kind of can't advance safely. He's also currently blocking their advance and making it very difficult. So he's doing a lot by not doing anything, which is kind of cool. However, I did pull the Prussians away and actually gathered all the Prussian resources into those 2 units. So if the French want to fight them again, yeah, they can. But for the most part, I'm opening everything up. I cleared Berlin out for them, Königsberg, if they want to siege it. I'm just giving in because I don't see a way of winning, this war against the French, and I want to get it over with quickly, the same way Austria maybe wanted to on their turn. The Brits not going to advance against Junot here. That's who I've got there. Yeah. With his, Army of Spain in Hanover? Because I want Hanover to fall to the French before I take it. I don't want it to be part of Prussia or anything like that. Taking it from the French might be useful in the sense of preventing the French from gaining as much at this war, but I decided, I don't want to risk my army for this. I want to deploy the English army in reasonable places only. And you see there's a follow-up, which is there's a second army up here with Davout. So that's kind of risky. And I'm regretting not going shopping. It's gotten late enough. I could, but I don't want to. Plus, I'm feeling kind of sleepy and probably take a nap or something. Stupid party going on back at the pavilion again. It's weird because it's Monday. I don't think it's a holiday, but just somebody's wedding or something on a Monday. But I had a sequence of chits pulled, which I think is everything except for the Empire land chit and the winter chit. So this is giving the best chance for a winter show, a quick winter turn showing up that can kind of be generated. Sure, you could just pull it on the second shit and, well. But it's just kind of funny to see, yeah, I've had all the coalition land, both the naval, both the neutrals. And obviously these coalition lands haven't been affected, but they're essentially not in the cup right now until the first Empire comes out. I could put them in, but they just count as blanks until then. I guess the most interesting was the coalition naval. We ended up pulling the additional, the Portuguese troops in the Peninsular Army, along with the supply source, let's get this here, into the, in with Wellington. This doesn't really make it a stronger strike force right now, but it gives me more room. I can pull the Swedes back to join that at this point and stuff like that. Also, you know, Prussia could reinforce it, but Russia's not long for this war, I think. What we did was we left the channel open. That's okay, because there are no French troops near it. We got a squadron up here that can, you know, help defend that if need be. But we blockaded all the French fleets at this point. And the Turks are also blockaded, for whatever that's worth. They're the only other kind of threat, but they're not allied with France, but they're at war with England too. So, yeah, so that's kind of interesting. And let's see what we get. Could be a winter, could be, more likely, it's an Empire chit. So then these go back in, we do a shakeroonie, and then we get, at least Napoleon gets to try to do something. That's the thing, that could have saved Prussia for another turn. But it wouldn't really matter, except for the territories that aren't taken. Like, I'm going to probably do an extended march here to get down to Neufchâtel. Oh, wait, I'm holding Württemberg. No, that's not me. This is me. I don't know, maybe I can't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I can get to Neufchâtel. And chances are I will not, like, lose a Swiss unit for that, but if I do, it's worth it. It's too stupid to put a commander there. Yeah, that's often the case for me, is like I don't really bother with the reinforcement phase at the beginning of any turn. So what I need is I need an Empire 1 to take Neufchâtel, which sucks. It was just stupidity. It was just stupidity. But it's very easy to just be like, oh yeah, I got my guys in the place. Do I want to cheat here and throw the leader down? Like, it's not like France has any shortage of leaders. I certainly would have done it. I forgot that it was winter. So I did lose this step, even with a relatively low roll, because of the +4 for winter. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And I feel kind of good about that trade-off, right? Like, yeah, I cheated, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a perfect advantage for me. But it's definitely something I wanted to do. And yeah, I do that kind of fudging pretty regularly. I'm going to try to grab Mecklenburg. I'm afraid to take the Hanseatic League, which I could get from Prussia, away. And I don't particularly want it. You know, I mean, there may be some reason, I don't know. But, oh, wait, it's part of the GE. Oh, fuck. It's something that I need. See, but I can't afford to because I don't want to get within striking range of this. But this thing could end up triggering, because now all those shits are back in. And so there's like only a 1 in 7 chance of drawing the winter quarters, which actually means that this could fall too, but maybe I can run away or something. You know, it's kind of a, hey, what do I want to do? The Brits would, well, they don't want to take Hanover, and they don't particularly want to save Mecklenburg. They're okay with Prussia losing things. The complexity of Napoleon to do, but things are kind of twisty right now. So we moved up and sieged Kassel with what? The army of Italy? And that was unsuccessful, but I might do a forced march to get another activation. Yeah, a forced march to siege more. Whatever. It just, again, like I mentioned, I marched into Mecklenburg here, but then these guys marched forward, destroyed the Swedish force, killing the Swedish commander, by the way. I forgot to check the French commander. The French took no losses, and they did not lose a leader either. But I killed the Swedish leader, and with Bernadotte out, that means there's no Swede leaders left, which is okay. I mean, I can use Brits, but Brits, there aren't a shit ton of Brits either. But that left me not enough movement to join up with the army of Spain here, which I would have really liked to do, having, you know, two kind of not big but okay armies together would be better. Right now I'm vulnerable to Wellington, and I feel kind of stupid for being spread out as much as I am. But I'm thinking about spreading out with Napoleon as well. The question is, what can I gain by doing so? That is really the objective here. Now, I could try to charge across to Berlin, but I don't think I make it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd have to force march. I can send a small unit there. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only have a detachment, so it's absolutely safe. So that can go to Berlin. And if the Prussians try to defend Berlin, I can either say, screw it, you can last another turn if you want to. I don't think it's in your best interests. Or just, you know, buckle down and take a forced march on that. Oh, I came from here. Okay, so I think this was actually 1, 2, 3. Let me think, because I don't want to take Brunswick. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 2. From here. Yeah, I am going to join those armies, I guess. I think that's better. I thought I was coming into this hex. I was coming up here, and I'm okay with that. The Swedes obviously aren't going to either attack or they're not allowed to withdraw, so that's fine. But now I got to figure out what I do with Napoleon and whatnot. And something of a ugh. I rolled relatively low, very low, if that 2 is right down there, and just barely missed being able to take Königsberg. I used the entire Napoleonic army. I did move over to Berlin. I left a supply source here so that, or a depot there. This is one I can intercept into if the Prussians decide to try to cut me out of supply, which is of more importance than any of the other things they can do. Could they cut me anyway? Yeah, they could put themselves like here or something. So I'm in kind of a problematic situation. Of course, they'd have to force march to do that. Costing themselves attrition to try to hurt me against the Russians, because Prussia can't hold out. They just can't hold out. Got to think about the Turks too. Do they want to do anything? Hey, because of the condition of the Chit Cup, the chance that a winter chit could come up. If it doesn't, a coalition land move comes up and it'll be, this is able to act. But because of the situation I'm in, where there's basically, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 chits gone, I'm looking at a 20% chance of a win. Now, it could have held off. It'll go up if I hold off, but it's not guaranteed. The Empire 4 is in there, which would not have allowed me to do all of this. These are 3s. I needed to move a depot here. I've basically got a link of depots there. If the winter chit comes up, Turkey wins the game. I feel like that 20% shot is worth it, especially given that we're collecting up victory points and in a pretty good shape anyway. But it doesn't. We're going to get trashed by the Russians. But this is the thing. The Turks are going to be constantly like this thorn in the Russians where they can't really defend against France because Turkey will win the game. Now, they're going to lose their army here, I think. I could make different options. I could attack this. I could actually split the Russian army and hit multiple things because that's just a 1. I've got 2 armies. They're both decent size. I could also send like a Cossack out to destroy this or something. Well, this detachment could do it. So I can break up the Turkish position to a greater extent. And I think I'm going to go for that, even though that means separating my army. France is not that close, but maybe they're within range of the Boulogne card. But on the other hand, I think Russia is doomed as well. It's just kind of a matter of, can they hold out long enough? I don't know. I think we're looking at a question between a Turkish automatic victory or a French automatic victory by establishing the continental system and playing whack-a-mole, but don't know for sure, right? And I missed getting something important. I missed getting the Hanseatic League, which I believe is Prussian. Nope, it's British. Okay, cool. So I can take that, but that can only be taken in winter. I would have had to take it this turn, or I can take it next year. I think the victory conditions actually require I own those things as opposed to occupy them like these others, but I'm not positive of that. Has annexed to its territory the GE things, which means I have to actually hold the Hanseatic League at a winter. That's not going to be problematic once I knock, all the coalition out of the war, basically. What is problematic is Spain. Not going to be able to get, of course, if I allow the substitution of Turkey for Spain type of thing, maybe I can. I don't know. Because it's about the same trade capability, and I just don't think it's fair. I feel like one nation at least should be able to be out of it. And if Turkey is blockading the Brits because they're at war with them, I think that's significant enough. But of course, Turkey can always come to a peace with the Brits. Alternatively, I think in Empires in Arms, you're allowed to trade with people you're at war with, if you choose to, which is really kind of, it captures the era properly, because the Brits did actually end up trading with people they were at war with at times. Yeah, it is a shame that Turkey didn't just get like an automatic victory there. But, the odds, I could have figured out what the odds are, right? But if I didn't do it this turn, if I didn't take my chance this turn, that Russian army could have fucked me up and made it so that I couldn't do it. By just like taking out one of my depots or something. By the way, there was a Russian depot here in Kiev. One of the things I find kind of odd about this game is that the depots don't, you can't do anything. You don't capture them. They're just destroyed. And it feels like, look, if I have to make as I did here, and I didn't bother to, if I have to make an attrition roll, I should get the depot value for eating it. You know, it was just there. I've got kind of a complicated turn going on, and I'm gonna close my window and turn on my fan because hot as it is up here, and I like the window there. This is gonna be complicated because not only do the Russians have their operation to take advantage of, but Wellington's gonna make a strike here. And then after all of that, I can think about Prussia, although they don't really have to do anything. They're going to survive this turn. A bunch of countries, or a bunch of miners are going to fall to France, though. I'll say one thing. I know I've harshed on the automatic victory conditions for a while, but I gotta say, in terms of gameplay, not so much in terms of historical believability and whatnot, but in terms of gameplay, they are generating an interesting sort of dynamic that feels a lot more like, say, the coin games or maybe the Levy and Campaign or Campaign and Levy type stuff. These games where you're constantly being faced with, yeah, I want to do things, but I've got to do other stuff to prevent somebody from getting an automatic victory. I kind of like that. I kind of like that, like, there was a chance that the game could just end here and that people are taking risks and all that kind of stuff to try to push. Oh, I know, Here I Stand. The Here I Stand games often have, I think they all have, an automatic victory type condition that's generally a stretch. The problem with this is it's not that big a stretch to get. But I've got this sort of, I really got to keep that thing in check or whatever. Unfortunately also, though, I feel like Turkey is the most likely to be able to sleaze itself an automatic victory. Simply because the Ottoman Empire is not cared about by anyone else for anything. So nobody else is going to really care too much about the fact that they grab it. Now, maybe you just can't let them. Maybe anybody who wants a shot at winning the game has to prevent them from getting it. And certainly keeping it because of that 1 point per turn. I'm like, wow, somebody's got to do something about Turkey or they are going to fucking win the game off of those victory points that they're generating. I think. Maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway. Just wanted to show the other side of the victory conditions thing because this is exciting, what's happening right now, right? The fact that Turkey had a shot, had a 20% shot of winning just based on the chit pull. The fact that France is beginning to formulate what they have to do to get themselves a win from the game. The supply line, Kutuzov has marched up and cut and slammed into the Turkish army. It was unable to withdraw. It's out of supply. It's not in good shape. I think they're going to take it as a siege, actually. Granted, they will have to roll attrition, but here's the thing. They might get an honors of war, which saves their troops. And I think it's the only way to save their army at this point. Hey, so the Russian siege, they only got to go one round of siege, and they didn't take it. They got an assault. Oh, actually, there's a chance. There's a chance. The Turks have high morale. Wow. That's interesting. They survived. Barely. They have a 4 morale, a leader, but they lost 1 extra step. So yeah, they don't surrender the fortress at this point. One thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna break for a little bit because it sounds like the party is over and there might be food and it's still daylight. So that's really awesome for me because I don't have to go up there with a flashlight trying down through the garbage. not. I still hear sounds coming from there when I stepped out my door. I think they're just cleaning up. It kind of sucks though. Like, I really would have liked this kind of daylight. But anyway, it means that like I'm in the midst of this turn and I really shouldn't be. But let me keep working. Ration managed to slice through, not destroy, it destroyed the depot, but nearly destroy the Turkish force that was up on the border here. They drove them back, and then I sliced down at this other one. That one managed to withdraw. This one's demoralized though. Actually, it is destroyed. Fuck you, man. There would have been pursuit because I have some cav in my force, and there was only one step left. Egyptian militia. So yeah. But I also managed to wipe out. So I managed to wipe out that force and drive the other force back. Now this is putting me further and further apart, you know, with my two armies. But I feel like giving Turkey a real setback is worth it, for whatever it's worth. And they still have a lot of feudal troops on the board, but a lot of their armies destroyed if we count this as being wrecked. It's not gone yet, but it probably will be. I need to put some dice up here because I'm going to take a slightly longer break in the midst of this turn, in the midst of this chit. I know Wellington wants to move. I don't think anything else necessarily does. Bugger, nothing usable. By the way, I know one thing is wrong with this camera, which is every time I take the battery out, I have to reset the date and time, which means the CMOS or whatever is on it has died. That happened to my computer as well, which is a bigger deal with the computer because I have to reset the BIOS. The French have two armies here. That's a bit much. The Peninsular Army doesn't exist, basically. So instead I just shifted the strength point up there and dropped a detachment in by merging. The Anglo-Dutch is still is of decent size, but I don't think it can face. That's going to be, I think, the Army of Spain and the Army of the North. Neither of which is huge, but the English don't want to fight battles just for the sake of battles. Now, again, in Empires in Arms, there's the glory component, which means if you win an important battle, you get points on sort of the national will track or whatever, which basically is a victory point generator in that game. So I think I'm actually done with that shit. I'm gonna break. I know it seems like I just broke, but I don't really feel like there's much else I want to do unless some of these guys want to move. I mean, they're just supply trains. I really just want to get them out of the way more than anything. It seems like a good idea. Let's do that. I don't know why I'm doing this on camera, except that I'm trying to figure out, is there anything else that I want to do? The Prussians are pretty much done and don't want to challenge what's happening particularly. Like I said, Wellington, he doesn't want to, he's got the Hansa under his control. He doesn't want to take Mecklenburg away from the French, although it is one of the French automatic victory spaces. But there may be others that are of importance. I don't want to pull more chits because I think we're close to the end, and the winter aspect, like the end of winter thing here with all the miners surrendering and new countries being formed, and like I might be forming Westphalia or something here, I don't know what's required, are going to cause a lot of effort there, and I want to break. The camera came, I'm of course afraid to open it. I'm sure it'll work fine, but I'm always terrified of, you know, finding out bad news about anything. That puts us, I've moved the activation markers. Attrition, I rolled. The Turks took a little bit here. Yeah, somebody else is out of supply. Seems to feel like somebody else got caught out of supply. But I don't see it. All right, fair enough. That puts us at time to start resolving all the sort of winter peace phase, well, type stuff, right? The conquest here. And we're going to see I don't believe we see the creation of Poland yet. That has to wait for the Prussian surrender. But we're going to see a number of states switching hands. Not as many as I hoped for. Hesse isn't switching. And that may be it. You know, these stupid damn miners, the way they're handled. Mecklenburg is conquered by Prussia, so it doesn't actually switch hands either. And Mecklenburg is, I think, not part of this. Again, I have to look at the list to be sure, but it's just, it's such a fucking annoyance. There's a lot of stuff in this game that is. Anyway. So Mecklenburg doesn't actually switch either. Changes are Holland, Hanover, and Saxony. Now, Holland and Hanover, I have to actually convert over to being mine. So I don't get the troops from them. They go into this pile. They're part of that GE. And this is funny because I think Holland actually, could, and was, yeah, Holland was a French minor. But if we look at these rules in incorporation, I don't think that's even legal. Even though it was established as the fucking Batavian Republic. Yeah, this bugs me so much. If we look at, let's find, if the minor country is not adjacent to the, okay. Otherwise, all land units are destroyed except for Polish units which stay under French control, but cannot be rebuilt. But again, I think if Poland's reestablished, they can. It can become a province if it has no combat units. If the minor is located within the Grand Empire, it must be integrated into France's national territory. This is really weird. Like, the establishment of the Batavian Republic must be some kind of weird thing that allowed France to create it at some point, but now it just ends up absorbed. And it would have ended up absorbed in the 1792 scenario, too. So it's really kind of fucked up. And it can't become a province if it's not adjacent to national territory. Now, you can reinstate a minor, and maybe this is how it's allowed, which allows it to become a satellite. A minor with available... See, this is the fucked up thing, right? Must be integrated. I feel like that prevents you from reinstating it. Hanover is the same way. So, those territories are getting absorbed. Saxony, on the other hand, is not adjacent to French territory, so it can't become a satellite. Thuringia hasn't been added. Hesse doesn't connect anyway. So, yeah, so that's pretty much where we are at this point. Turkey. This is a big question. Do Turkey and Russia want to go to peace, essentially? Feels to me like Russia would want some kind of guarantee that Turkey's not going to attack them again. But that kind of guarantee, I mean, it could save Turkey its army. Turkey's going to get their production, which is not huge. It's $20 and a 9.3. In order for this to happen, Britain and Prussia are involved in the negotiations as well. Which means Russia would have to convince one of those two that a peace with Turkey makes sense. Britain is not sure that a peace with Turkey makes sense. They kind of think that they would like to attack the North African territories. Much like in Empires in Arms, take that land away from the enemy hands. Prussia likes the idea of... So Prussia's torn on this, right? Do they like the idea of Russia being neutered a little bit? Maybe. But there is the worry about a French automatic victory coming forward. And that Turkey is sort of a thorn in Russia's side. But I don't think they're going to support it either. Now, Russia could break the alliance to make a separate peace with Turkey, but that really seems like a bad idea. So I think we're going to leave it as it is, and I think that's where we end up. This thing goes up to +2, which means I should have been checking all game. I didn't realize that +1 was there. Hold on. Okay, and for this turn, let's see if the India War resolves. At +2, the India War is going to resolve, which means the Indian troops get to come back as reinforcements. And the US war has an end of war of 6, which it doesn't get, and so we'll put the marker there and leave the War of 1810 going. The British reinforcements will be coming in, Stuart and whatever troops had to go to India. Austria is going to be available again in autumn. Might not be able to recycle. Russia's big. It's hard to take them. Again, the Boulogne camp might do it, but we probably can't defeat Russia twice in one game. Yeah. All right, I guess this one's ready to load up then. Maybe we'll test the new camera in between.